The entire concept of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 has me so giddy and has the entire Zelda community super hyped. From that one trailer that Nintendo showed us at E3 this year, we have so many things to talk about. The fact that Ganondorf, or who we think is Ganondorf, is finally back, that this is going to take place in the same Hyrule as Breath of the Wild with the same characters, Link and Zelda, and God knows who else. The whispers in the darkness that lead to the belief that true dungeons from Zelda Yore are going to be returning in Breath of the Wild 2, and of course so much more. But one aspect that a lot of people are talking about when it comes to this game is the role of the princess herself. Not only is Zelda rocking a pretty cool haircut that fits her in my opinion, but it seems to me that she's going to take a much more active approach in this game just like she did before the Calamity. Many fans have been dying to know and discussing what her role could be in this particular game, as she will be one of the few Zeldas that actually return in another title, and given what we know from the previous entry in Breath of the Wild, she could have a much more substantial role in this game and compared to any other Zelda that came before her. Hey everyone, it's HMK with another Breath of the Wild 2 video. Zelda's role in previous Zelda games have fluctuated a lot, given that a lot of the games within the series are mostly one-off stories. But this time, it's going to be different, radically different. And that, to me, is wild. Breath of the Wild. And we're going to discuss that and break it down in this video. So, for the safety of hype, strap on in. This video is going to be wild. I made that joke already. Well, either way, let's dive right into the noise. The first thing that we have to point out is where exactly we left off with Breath of the Wild and the character that is Princess Zelda. At the end of the first game, we were able to free Princess Zelda from the clutches of Calamity Ganon, and then she was able to use her sacred sealing power to finally seal the monstrosity away. With that being said, she looks pretty healthy. But of course, it goes a bit further than that when we unlock the true ending. After the spirits of the fallen bid farewell to Link and Zelda, Zelda decides, together with Link, she must rebuild the land of Hyrule and its kingdom. It is on that note that she decides to visit Zora's domain as Divine Beast Varuta has stopped working. Before setting off, she comments on how she no longer hears the voice within the sword and that her power might have dwindled to nothing during the 100 years she was keeping Calamity Ganon at bay. This gives us a ton of context to work with when addressing Zelda's character in the sequel, as we have an idea on where her power stands and her goals moving forward. But the next question we have to ask ourselves is how exactly long has it been between Breath of the Wild and the sequel? While Breath of the Wild 2 is a sequel most direct in the Zelda series, we have to take into account the changes that we see from the trailer. Firstly, the overall setting of the trailer. Link and Zelda are on this deep, dark, cave-like setting. Definitely a far cry from what we're used to in Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. That tells us the mission that Zelda was originally on, or at least told us about at the end of Breath of the Wild, has shifted in gears a bit. From wanting to help rebuild Hyrule and then going on over to Zora's domain and we wind up in a place like this, yeah, that's a huge difference. That's one thing. And then we also have to consider Zelda's appearance. While her field clothes are pretty much the same from the first game, she now has a cloak and hood to match up with Link's Hylian hood. And then of course, the big elephant in the room is that she's rocking a brand new hairstyle that is much shorter than it was in the first game. Changes like this don't usually happen overnight. So I want to throw out a nice round number to say that possibly a year may have passed between Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2 that landed them in this spot and with Zelda's new appearance. And in that context, we have to think about what she could have done already. Has she wanted to rebuild Hyrule in its former glory? Has she reclaimed her title as princess? Has she reestablished the kingdom of Hyrule as the backbone of society? Will we see more towns spring up in Hyrule where there was ruin in the first game? I want to assume so, because this new threat that Link and Zelda are apparently hunting in this new trailer will need to have something to threaten. While sure, the other tribes have their own societies well intact, Ganondorf's main enemy has usually been the royal family of Hyrule, and thus in extension, the Hylians themselves. So since Link and Zelda are apparently looking for this and that Nintendo felt the need to bring back Ganondorf, it tells me that Hyrule has healed enough to the point where this threat would be substantial to the land in peril. And that healing would come about Zelda's hand, as that is her plan, and I feel that she is smart enough in order to get that done. Speaking of getting stuff done, we come to the question about her powers and her abilities, and will she be able to fight or not, and of course the question of co-op. When it comes to Zelda's mystical powers and abilities, you know, the sealing power that she used to seal away Calamity Ganon, she already stated in the previous game that she felt that her powers had dwindled as she could no longer hear the voice within the sword. Now, we should take this assumption with a grain of salt, as one, she would have nothing to truly test out her powers at this point since Ganon's already sealed, and two, why would the sword speak to her at that point in time, as there's no real immediate threat at that point? So it could be entirely possible that Zelda still has her abilities and her mystical powers. Remember, in a previous theory, I stated that she is the one that hears that weird song in the trailer, and I feel that that song, Fi singing to Zelda from the Master Sword, warning her of the impending return of the Calamity Ganondorf. And if Zelda were to retain her abilities, she can use that in a combative stance, possibly assisting Link in battle. One thought in my head is that if Malice were to continue to exist in this new world of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, it could still pose a threat in possibly infecting enemies or producing more. And in those cases, Link would have to team up with Zelda in the point where he would weaken enemies that are infected with Malice, or Malice itself with the Master Sword, so that Zelda could use her sealing power to be completely rid of it. And in that sense, she could offer some co-op gameplay. While there are Zelda fans that would prefer to fight with a sword and shield just like Link, I feel that I will personally enjoy a more varied outlook on her possible gameplay if she were to be playable in this game. But once again, there is that aspect we have to think about, that this is a Legend of Zelda game. And what usually happens in Legend of Zelda games is that one way or another, Zelda ends up getting captured by the enemy, which in this case would be a newly reanimated Ganondorf. And from the way the trailer ended for Breath of the Wild 2, it seems that it could be possible that Zelda will once again fall into the clutches of Ganondorf. And it is that perspective that I play around with the theory that the reason why Ganondorf would want to capture Zelda this time around is to use her mystical power. For what, you may ask? Well, what's the one thing Ganondorf is always after when it comes to the Zelda series? That's right, you know it, the Triforce. The Triforce was a huge missing part of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I mean, so was Ganondorf. And with the return of the Evil King, I feel that this spells the return of the Triforce. And with Zelda, you know, being Zelda and having the mystical sealing power that seems to have the Triforce emblem when she uses it, makes me theorize that in some way, shape, or form, if this power isn't truly the Triforce dwelling within her, that she is borrowing the Triforce power from another location. That she is linked to this divine relic, because remember, she does have the blood of divinity flowing through her veins, carrying what is known as the blood of the goddess Hylia. And I feel that a strong narrative point in Breath of the Wild 2 is that if Zelda were to be captured by Ganondorf, Ganondorf would use this Link in order to track down the Triforce and thus starting a race against time with Link. And personally, I do dig this sort of narrative, but if that costs us Zelda as a playable, tangible character to be alongside us for a good portion of the game, then I'm a bit iffy on that. Because if we keep Zelda active in the game, we can learn more about the backstory of her and the royal family, not just in Breath of the Wild and its sequel, but in the whole history of the Zelda series. We could learn more about Hylia herself, the relation that Zelda has to the goddess, and they could explain why Hyrule suddenly decided to start praising the goddess after who knows how long. And then, of course, one huge thing that I hope they dive into, because, you know, Zelda and Link are looking for this dark mystery underground, is that I hope to see Zelda finding out the royal family's darkest secrets. Something must have tipped off Zelda and Link in order to go find Ganondorf's corpse, whether it be the song that we're hearing in the trailer, or maybe Zelda stumbled on some old family records when cleaning out Hyrule Castle. I mean, this specific incarnation of Zelda is definitely a huge bookworm, so I could lean in that direction. This way, the royal family as an entity could be fleshed out more in the Zelda series, along with how they handle their secrets within the family, and of course with the Sheikah, and can give us an intimate explanation on how Ganondorf wound up like that. Throw the Yiga into the mix, and we have a potent plot element that uses Zelda as a catalyst. Either way, with Zelda's role, identity, and abilities already locked in from what we know in Breath of the Wild going into the sequel with Breath of the Wild 2, I feel that her role in this specific game could be one that would be grand and blossom into a fountain of information and lore that could benefit the game and the series. But of course, Nintendo has to be brave enough to take that step. But I want to know what you guys think about what Zelda's role could be in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. Leave your thoughts and theories in the comment section below, and be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to HMK as I post Zelda content every week. Big thanks once again to all my Patreon supporters for help making this video happen. If you want to find out how you can support HMK for just $1 a month, please check out my Patreon page. Alright guys, until the next video, this has been HMK, and I'll check you guys later.